Welcome to the Agronomy and Farm Management Podcast. I'm Bruce.
And I'm Josh, and we're your farm management hosts. Let's get started.
Josh, let's kick this off and talk about AI, artificial intelligence. What might have you done this week using artificial intelligence?
Well, Bruce, it seems like everything nowadays is using AI. I don't know how you get around it. And one issue that I have specifically right now with this podcast is dealing with Zoom. We're trying to record this podcast, and I always like to turn mute on whenever someone else is talking so they don't hear me in the background. And it always whispers in my ear, mute on, mute off. And it just drives me nuts. So I've spent the last 5 minutes trying to figure out how to turn that off. And I don't think it's going to let me. I think AI is telling me you can't do that. It's something that's going to stay with you. So, Bruce, how have you used AI?
Well, probably a little more, I guess, transactional or procedural. I had a huge email list of some clientele that we deal with across the calendar year, and it kind of got messy over time. And I had duplicates, and I wanted to get organized by their domain name and how many did I have from this company and how many did have at this company. So I had honestly 570 names on this list. And so I wanted some help. And so my task was to upload that file to our AI Copilot that we use for Ohio State University. And it turned that back around. It organized and got rid of the duplicates and kind of cleaned up my file pretty quickly. So I was feeling pretty savvy, I guess, and really getting a final product that I was happy with and was able to reach out and really work with our clientele and extension more effectively, I hope, with a cleaned up list.
So, Bruce, AI goes along with the topic we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about ag technology, talking about target spray, pre and post applications. So, we actually have an unfamiliar guest with us to the podcast today. We have Amanda Douridas, our counterpart when we talk about agronomy. Amanda Douridas is the Ohio State University Extension Educator for Madison County for Agriculture and Natural Resources. Her on-farm research has focused on nutrient management and adapting to changing weather patterns within cropping systems. She also serves as the co-leader of the OSU Agronomic Crops team and is a certified crop advisor. She enjoys working in all aspects of agriculture and natural resources in the county, including local foods, agronomic research, master gardener volunteers, and home horticulture. Amanda holds a bachelor's and a master's degree from The Ohio State University in agribusiness and agricultural economics. Amanda, welcome to this side of the podcast.
Thanks, guys. When you asked me to be on, I was like, oh, I don't know. Podcast scary. No, I'm just teasing.
So, Amanda, let's dive right on in. So, how do you and others describe target spray technology versus traditional spray technology or practices?
Traditional system, I'm sure many of our listeners are familiar with, is just where you mix up a tank of herbicide and apply that across the entire field, or a term that we use, broadcast. So broadcasting that at the same rate across the field. Target spray is where AI comes in. It's an AI powered system. It uses boom mounted cameras. It has a processor and utilizes machine learning so it can identify weeds in real time and apply the herbicide only to those weeds, differentiating between the crop.
Sounds like some really smart technology, Amanda, and I'm glad that you're able to do something like that, certainly with Ohio State. Where did you conduct this research at with Ohio State University?
Yeah, so partnered with the crops team at Molly Cairn Ag Center. For those who might not be aware, haven't put two and two together, it's a 2,100 acre facility that's site to the Farm Science Review. So if you've been to Farm Science Review, you've been to Molly Cairn. A lot of people don't realize they have 1,400 acres of corn, soybean, and wheat production. And it's not set up like a research facility. So it is farm scale production, but they do some field scale research there with large equipment like this research trial.
So, we already mentioned how AI is kind of taking over the world and providing us a lot of useful information and having us some creative ways to use it. What engineering technology do we need to do this target spray?
Sure, I'm not an ag engineer, but I'll do my best to explain. In simple terms, we use the John Deere See and Spray system. So at a John Deere sprayer, And the See and Spray system is 36 cameras that are mounted onto a 120-foot boom. Right now, they just have the capability for the 120-foot boom, and those are the cameras that scan the field. So as you are aware that they are on the boom, so they have to be able to see that weed, identify it, and process it within milliseconds because the spray, the nozzles are right behind those cameras and they have to be able to identify and then initiate the spray on that weed as it's seeing it. So yeah, milliseconds to process all that information.
So, Amanda, there was a lot that had to go into kind of laying out this research. And when you're doing research versus just a demonstration, you had a way of conducting how you were going to proceed in the field. And so kind of give us a description, if you could, of kind of the layout and how you conducted this target spray research.
Yeah, so this is a little different than your typical research trial because we did not have replication or randomization. We were simply comparing the cost savings from herbicide use. So we compared it to a broadcast application, and we did not actually make that broadcast application, just estimated in the calculations. In 2024, we did pre and post applications, and we had several fields in both of those. I think we had 6 maybe in the pre-target application, and then a few more, 9 maybe in the post. And then in 2025, we just looked at 3 fields with post-target spray application. So the farm employees applied the technology to certain fields across the farm there at Molly Caron, and then did visual evaluations to compare the control with what a typical weed control was expected from their past season broadcast applications.
Dr. Alyssa Essman, OSU Extension's weed specialist, would probably say that we need to broadcast residuals to ensure that we're controlling those difficult weeds such as water hemp. Did you apply residuals to these fields, and how would farmers use this technology to go about that?
Yeah, that's a great question and something that we do point out whenever we're talking about this research because with a residual, you want that broadcast across the entire field. And if you're doing target spray, the point of that is to not spray the entire field. The particular sprayer they had at Molly Caron was set up as a 2-tank system, so they were able to apply their residuals the same time that they were target spraying. If you don't have that 2-tank system and you wanted to implement See and Spray, then you're likely going to need to make another pass across your field for those residual applications.
Amanda, I think it's great. It's awesome that your research combined an agronomic technology, and then you also had this economic objective to your study. And your economic objective to the study was evaluating the potential cost savings. So what was your methods that you used to evaluate that cost savings approach?
Yeah, we essentially looked at acres that received a herbicide application and calculated the cost of that herbicide. So we're really only looking at the herbicide cost. There is also a technology fee that John Deere charges, and that has changed. So in 24, pre was a $1 fee, post was a $4 fee, and 25, they went to a $5 technology fee that was added to acres that were not applied. So if the technology was engaged in not applying herbicide, then they charge you $5 on that. So just looking at the herbicide cost per acre, multiplying that across the acres that actually received a herbicide, and then comparing that to the cost that would have been if we applied the herbicide to all the acres of that field.
So let's talk about my favorite part about reading research reports, and that's the results. What did we find from this study? From the production side, did the weed control meet your expectations?
We found that it worked really well. It identified weeds and applied herbicide to those just as effectively as if a broadcast application had been done. So it didn't miss too many weeds, if any at all. So it was satisfactory to the farm crew there from that standpoint and is, something that they didn't have any qualms about using again.
That's probably important for Molly Karen because Farm Science Review visitors view those fields. And so weed control is something that's probably a high expectation for Ohio
Mhm.
State to have in their production systems. That's really great to hear. So then on the other side of their research, your economic questions. What kind of conclusions have you made on the cost savings of this technology?
So on most fields, we did see a cost savings. So the percent of acres that, whether you're looking at it received an application or did not receive an application, those ranged from maybe 10% of acres that received an application up to some fields were 79, 97%. So there were some fields where it didn't make sense to use it on. And when you got into those upper levels, say the 97%, that's when that technology fee catches up with you. And essentially, you're paying more to apply those acres than you would have with a broadcast application. But for all others, we did see a cost savings for herbicides. And last year for 2025, as I said, we had 3 fields that we looked at here, and the total savings was $1,785. So that was a per acre savings of about $4 to $5 per acre across the 3 fields. And then with having more fields back in 24, we did see cost savings of $3,800 across the farm in that case. So it definitely saves money on herbicide. Now, again, that does not take into account any labor. It doesn't take into account the equipment costs, which being a new and upgraded technology are significant. So that is something that a farmer would have to look at on their own and can kind of use this research to apply it to maybe how it might roll out on their farm and what their herbicide cost savings might be, and then work in a break even if they're considering buying one of these sprayers and how many years it might take to pay that off.
So Amanda, Bruce and I always know that you're always 5 steps ahead. Do you have any next steps for this type of research?
So it's been interesting this winter. We've actually had 2 requests from other land grant institutions across the country to utilize our data. We may do some more evaluation of it depending if Molly Karen has this technology again. They do change equipment quite a bit. But as far as like it's really gaining ground with other institutions and evaluating overall what that looks like, data here locally in London, Ohio is going to be utilized. I think Florida, Iowa, or Purdue maybe is looking at it. So that's been kind of cool to see.
Amanda, I wonder about the implication of this type of technology. We think of a farmer using see and spray technology, but what about the commercial industry? And this is a question that would it be comparable? Is it equivalent to us thinking about variable rate fertilizer application? That's pretty common in the state of Ohio. Do we maybe have a vision of where this AI technology with herbicide applications might get with commercial hired tasks for the farm to be done by a commercial applicator, and we see the spray and see and spray technology being utilized more across acres in Ohio?
Yeah, Bruce, I think that's a great question and something I think we'll have to feel out. As farmers want to implement this technology on their farm, but maybe that payback period is looking pretty far out there. I think some of them are considering doing commercial applications themselves so they can have it for their farm, but also lessen that gap in the purchase of it. I haven't talked to co-ops on this to see if it's something they're considering implementing, but I do think when we think about the environmental impact of agriculture or the social impact of agriculture, that this does have some ground to make up with our clientele or, consumers of agriculture products or just people in general. A lot of them don't realize that when we put a herbicide down, we're putting down a lot of times ounces or even less of these herbicides. It's mostly water, right? But when we can talk to them about things like we're reducing our herbicide use by up to 90% on some fields by using this technology, I think there's some benefit there too. And with co-ops being able to cover larger acres, maybe trying to find a niche with consumers choosing them over a competitor and being able to offer some cost savings in herbicides could be a benefit. Also, as we deal with things like water hemp and, whatever's coming next, we see those herbicide costs continue to increase, and that can be challenging, especially in our current economic times with lower crop prices. So anywhere we can see some savings actually at the farm gate, I think helps. What are your thoughts on that, Bruce? I'm sure you have some.
Yeah, I think maybe along the same lines very much so. I think as we have adopted other technologies in other sectors of agriculture, I think you mentioned everything from profitability to environmental responsibility to maintaining productivity levels in our systems. I think this AI technology with spraying checks all of those boxes as well. So we'll have to see how the technology works out and continue it to grow and be adapted into our systems. So where can somebody find the results that you shared with us today? Is there a place that you would point them towards?
Yeah, they're both in the eFields reports for 24 and 25. So just search OSU eFields or go.osu.edu/eFields and you'll be able to find them back in the technology section. So there's a lot of detail in there. It's hard to talk about without any visuals, but the tables go through how much was applied to each field, what that herbicide cost was, and you can see if a broadcast was applied. You can see those actual numbers and the actual cost savings, what products were used as well. So it makes it a little bit easier to compare to your own farm.
Thanks for listening today.
For more information about farm management tips, be sure to check out the farm office at farmoffice.osu.edu.